Hi everyone, my name's Richard Gevers. I've saved the end of the conference for some government slides, so I hope that sounds exciting. Although I do hope a use case for TICTeC of 60 million people in the continent of Africa and a potential testbed of how that might lead to better rights-based inclusive tech is compelling. Just to tell a little bit about my story, so I'm standing here now as the Deputy Director of the Digital Services Unit in the Presidency in South Africa, recently, like a month in. When I applied to TICTeC, I was the Director of Open Cities Lab, which is a very good organization that's been implementing digital and data government across the continent of Africa, as well as civic trust projects for the last 10 years. And so it's been quite an interesting journey to come out of civic tech into government so far. I think we're very keen to work in the open. I'm very keen to be here and in places like this to canvas and start to make sure that our approaches are very aligned to what the values I think we all align on are. It's also funny because I'm presenting a plan which sucks. So much has been done and nothing has been done. Like, to get to a point where we have a cabinet-approved roadmap and plan for the next 5 years has been an incredible amount of work, and now we're starting. So it's an interesting space to be in. This is nothing new. As I said, government slides, okay? But South Africa has certainly been using the word e-government for a very long time, and we're trying to catch up from that. But I think, more significantly, what's interesting in this space of digital public infrastructure, which is where we're operating, and to be honest, the hype cycle around things like digital ID and others, is the DPI world, and we've spoken a bit about this in sort of social times, seems very committed to not taking the lessons from before, from civic tech and other places, and trying to relearn them again from scratch. And so one of the things I think that it's really interesting in the bridging is not just civic tech to government, but it's also this very, what I think they think of as a very new space of DPI, and how it's open government, open data, open source civic tech again, and how maybe this community and ones like it can be so important in getting us to the point where we have user-centric services. So problem statements, I mean, the roadmap here represents political will. In South Africa, we've moved into, I would say, what is South Africa 2.0, in that we have a government of national unity, we have a lot of different things happening in the space. We've become a little bit more prominent in the world, a bit more than maybe we like sometimes, but I think it's for good reasons. But I think COVID, like in many places in the DPI sort of journey, COVID left a lot of governments exposed. Certainly us, we didn't know who people were, how we would pay them, critical like universal grants and things that they needed. And so this last 5 years has been a lot of how do we solve that for people. I think we're trying to ground this in rights and user agency, but we're really not used to that as a country. We're very much a country that has been delivered tech in an outsourced, vendor-driven way. And so I think there is a whole journey before us. Now, it may shock you to know that management consultants were involved in the roadmap drafting, and consultants need a house, and government needs a house to come from consultants, and so we have a house. But to my previous point, what I think is more exciting to me is the right-hand side. I think what everyone is hyped about at the moment is the left-hand side. So on the left-hand side, we're saying we're going to deliver digital ID, government-to-people payments, and payments across government that actually help us lift up the most vulnerable and marginalized. I think we're saying, and we will deliver a national data exchange and a digital services environment that allows people to engage with government in the way in civic tech we've known for many years it needs to be, a single access channel, something that's based on what residents' needs are. But what's more interesting to me is that this is about culture change and change management and pulling skills into the public sector and building ecosystems around that to support long-term service delivery. It doesn't, again, we've said this so many times, the tech is really incidental. And so, these ideas of building your digital capacity that's sustainable within the state, making sure our governance and our rights and our safeguards and our privacy and everything is in a good place, making sure that we've built an ecosystem around us that actually is able to be cohesive with legislative communities, civic tech communities, and those sorts of things, and making sure that we're working in the open. To me, that is going to be the test of whether we succeed or fail, as opposed to maybe the other side that seems very shiny at the moment. We've got our user. I've really been inspired by a lot of really good things that have come out lately. Jen Polker's book, but especially Richard Pope's book, Platform Land. He talks about a lot of great principles that I think we're really trying to embrace. Things like, we've always been told seamless design, but in government we need to design the seams. We need to help people understand where stuff comes from, how to build trust around it, and things like that. I seem to be competing, but that's okay. I'll talk loudly. And so Thandi, as our user, it's a very typical South African story. Young women with a young child or baby, just matriculated, so finished school with good results, looking to find a job, looking to support her elderly mother, register for a pension, looking to make sure that her child has all the things she needs in terms of ECD and all these sorts of things. And to say that I will, coming into this roadmap process and helping to develop it has been incredibly well represented and consulted, and there have been a lot of community interactions, which has given me a lot of hope for the fact that we're getting these problems right at the start. A lot of what we have to do now is make sure that we continue to engage with Thandis and Lebos and Zaneles and whoever else is going to be involved. But certainly the idea of design here is around life stages and the way in which we can engage as government, not in a supply-side way, but really starting to talk to how digital identity, the ability to have data quickly spread across government, payments, all wrap into services that map someone's life cycle. So currently we have in our social protection environment, like huge queues, people that can't afford it, taking days off work to try and register for grants. The cost of job seeking in South Africa is very high, and I think we have the highest unemployment in the world. We have, of 60 million people, 25 million people reliant on social protection. So very much trying to understand, how do we make sure people don't need a queue anymore, because it isn't something that's necessary? How do we make sure people can be paid instantly? How can we run eligibility tests instantaneously as well? But how can we also start to improve the way we provide care, because eligibility tests can be very brutal? How can we look to what the most vulnerable or marginalized people in South Africa need in terms of their life stages and support them in that? And so, our first focus very much is about how to create the link between social protection and jobs, and looking at how the DPI and tech environment, but really the service delivery environment wraps around that. This is super government. I mean, I'm not even going to try. We have this. And you can talk to me about, no, I'm kidding. So I think it's just to sort of say that what the real message that comes across here is that there's been a lot of work in designing a governance system that brings all of government together. We have our treasury there, we have our digital communications department, we have our reserve bank, we have our home affairs, we have our statistics department, we have public service. So, there is significant structure within what we're doing to give you hope that the things that we do in terms of this roadmap will happen, because there are director generals and an interministerial committee and the president who's interested in this stuff and can unblock stuff for us. So, I mean, for those who want to dive a little bit into what the classic DPI stack is and how we've seen it in Estonia and India and Brazil and UK and other places like that, it's classically being able to provide a foundational digital identity, something that is biometrically linked and can be controlled by a user, and allow that user or that resident to be able to prove who they are without having to do what they have to do now, which is compromise their actual credentials. So sending photocopies of an ID document of a passport to some bank, that it gets put on a stack, and you're getting your data spread everywhere. a data exchange that allows in that sort of idea of, is someone, eligible for a grant? What takes weeks to manually check between different databases, different banks, the tax authority, this can start to happen in seconds or less than a second. We can immediately, automatically take someone from a case of having to stand in a queue, spend weeks to find out if they're eligible for a grant, be very frustrated if there's some edge case that doesn't matter, to that decision actually happening automatically without them having to do anything. They can be registered, like almost qualifying for grants and social protection and being paid through the ability of us to share data and access data in a safe way. And then the payments switch and the way that we can actually directly connect to people as opposed to going through an expensive commercial space. But I think also what's very exciting, and what I'm excited about, is this idea of providing South Africans, and then a model maybe as we engage and collaborate with the continent. There's awesome stuff happening in Tanzania, awesome stuff happening in a lot of different places. Nigeria has just released great standards on DPI, but as we do this, showing how DPI and digital public infrastructure, which is a very, at the moment, very supply-side thinking type of intervention, can actually be linked to what people need and to improving livelihoods directly through digital services and services that wrap through digital means. As I said, I'm representing a group that has been put together, a unit that's put together that is essentially coordinating a nascent government digital service and collecting that all around. And very much, I think, the intention here is to have both. So we are trying to build government efficiency. We're not trying to doge anything. Government efficiency isn't bad as long as it's got trust and inclusion and agency. And so the first thing we're looking at is how services can be accessed remotely. These sort of really important use cases, especially for the 25 million people reliant on social protection, but also how, that left side of the house I was talking about, how we build a government and governance ecosystem that allows for this to happen in the long term and be embodied as values all over and all across. And a lot of our journeys, we've been flown to India and Brazil and many other places to see ID systems, payment systems, data exchanges work. And a lot of those stories are just showing how much can be saved and put towards better services, but also just historically how this decade that we worked through, or maybe even 15 years that we've all worked through in civic tech, and a lot of the things we've been saying, which is like vendor lock-in, proprietary, data privacy, these things have been very, all of a sudden be woken up and in these spaces being like, oh, these are problems. But I think it's really encouraging to see like how the work that we've been doing as a community globally is starting to find its way into government, even though it'll never be accredited to that. But yeah, that's always an interesting part of it. So what? I mean, what is the point at the end of TICTeC? I think to say that a lot of these things are underway is important, but in the discussions, I hope everyone got to sit in for Colin from Polis. Yesterday we heard from Civic Tech Field Guide team on AI audits. There's so much in this community that I seem to be in this really strange position of being able to implement for a country in a way, like we can start to test the ways that, and to Ava's presentation, which was brilliant, how can we start to get that ability to have participatory process happening in the way we're doing it? Use case in terms of something like a Polis in our environment is both to test what people think of how we're doing things, their perceptions on data privacy, their perceptions on overreach, their perceptions on digital channels and how accessible those are, but also for us to start to offer that as services to local governments and have these community building type of interventions within our ecosystem and really act as that spark. When we're starting, we will use AI in our work, and how do we make sure that we build in the safeguards, the preemptive audit and the ability to build access to data into our standards so that we're not having to scrounge around or retrofit things just to be able to understand what's happening and the outcomes of our tests of using any type of techniques or modern technology as it evolves. Awesome, 5 minutes, I can do this in like 3. But also, you know, the guidance that I'm looking for from the civic tech community is also we want to set up things like a public design system. We want to embrace the local but also international tech community. Say like, this is how do we build the best design into the way that we offer services? How do we make sure we understand the infrastructure of our data exchange and get the best minds on that from wherever they are? How do we build that? I think I had it somewhere. Nope. Non-governmental ecosystem into our thinking, and how do we start to work for the next 5 years, next 20 years as a country that's able to leapfrog maybe a tech journey potentially? How do we build that positive relationship that doesn't always have to be us agreeing with each other, but with, you know, a civic tech environment, and where can we advance from that and have lessons from that? I think that, so that's sort of saying the sort of things, I hope what I'm able to offer and present in this sort of space is these co-developments of service journeys and reusable patterns, the ability to test our DPI components with minds that have thought a lot around many of the different areas that we need to be thinking around rights and access and design and the like. The ability to offer contribution into our space, and also set up a DPI environment in the continent that's collaborative, that doesn't have it as just a new wave of tech colonialism with providers from outside the continent like rushing to give us our ID solution, even if it's open source, or our payment solution, but, you know, trying to invest in the longer term idea of building communities, local communities that collaborate with each other and localize open source projects, understand how to set proprietary tech within an open source and open standard frameworks, have support for that kind of thing, because we're going to have some big conversations and big barriers to overcome in that. And just build robust civic oversights and ecosystem participation in what we're doing through what we just heard from Ava, through, you know, AI audits, POTUS, many of the other things that we've all been very excited about for a long time. So there is a site, you have to put the www in. It's a current minor bugbear that I'm working through with our agency. At www.mymzansi.gov.za. It will probably look and feel a lot better, but for now it's somewhere where you can track where we're doing stuff, because I, of course, forgot to put any of my contact details on the slides. But you can obviously come and say hi. But yeah, thanks. That's what we're up to. Thanks for letting me present the government plan at the end of TICTeC.